This podcast may contain disturbing content for some listeners. It's intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. This is True Crime XS.
We did the 12 Days of Christmas. We actually recorded some holiday wrap-up stuff, which I may or may not use in the feed. But we had a cake mission request. We actually had a couple over Christmas. And usually I don't really look at those for the ones that are covered a lot by other mediums. But one of those stood out to me, and I felt like digging into it might be worthwhile for like a miniseries. And I guess in my mind, if I didn't want to straddle the fence on it. I wanted to come to some sort of conclusion. And I took a hard look at it. And Meg and I, over the course of sort of the holiday weeks, were able to dig into this case. So I wanted to put out a miniseries. And I decided that this is sort of the beginning of season 3. Last year, I sort of had this crossover time between season 1 and season 2 where I was just doing some of the Dixie Mafia stuff that had interested me. This case interested me in a different way. Lots of paperwork involved. There's court documents. There's another person who's dug really deep into it, and it's got a lot of nuances. I don't know what conclusions other people have come to in this case because I haven't looked at a lot of the media available on it. I really just wanted to look at it from the perspective of what facts were available. So I gave Meg what I had, and she gave me some more information, and we sort of dug into it. And we have multiple episodes of this where we feel like we know what happened. And I like to share those things because when there's a conclusion to it, I think people get more satisfaction from it. I don't know how it's going to drop in the feed, but there are 4 or 5 episodes here that will cover this case and something similar and sort of the idea behind the case just to get it out there for people. It may come all at one time, where it's sort of like we drop it the second week of January, or it may be a drop like an episode a week. We'll see how that goes. I don't want to drag it out too long, but it is interesting content for me, and I definitely want to share sort of what we looked into there.
New developments tonight in the high-profile disappearance of Harmony Montgomery, the 7-year-old New Hampshire girl who hasn't been seen in more than 2 years. Tonight, her mother is speaking out for the first time. Our Michael Rosenfield was first with the story at 6. He has the latest from Manchester, where a vigil was held tonight in Harmony's honor.
The mother knows if her baby's here or not, so I know she's here.
Crystal Story feels her daughter is still alive.
If she's listening to you right now, what do you want to say?
Hi, baby. If you can see me or you can hear me, I want you to know that I never stop looking for you, and I won't stop fighting until I find you, okay? And you stay strong, and Mommy's right here fighting for you. I love you.
Crystal made her first public appearance and her first public comment since her daughter's mysterious disappearance made widespread headlines over the last week. She lit candles and said prayers with family and friends at a park in Manchester Saturday.
We just want her to know how much she's loved, and we just want her to come home.
Crystal lost custody of her daughter, Harmony Montgomery, in 2018 as Crystal struggled with substance abuse issues. The last time she saw Harmony was over FaceTime around Easter 2019. After that, Crystal says Harmony's father, Adam Montgomery, who had legal custody, blocked all contact.
I've been begging for any type of answer since 2019. It's disgusting. Since Easter, when I had an Easter basket for her for over a year, I held on to that.
Crystal, who lives in Massachusetts, says she called New Hampshire schools, drove by homes associated with Adam, and made multiple calls to the Division of Children, Youth, and Families.
Do you feel let down by DCYF?
Oh, yeah. They've let so many people down. My daughter was failed by everybody. everybody.
New Hampshire's Department of Health and Human Services has declined to comment on the case, citing confidentiality issues. Adam was arrested this past week and is facing several charges, including for failing to have Harmony in his custody. But he hasn't been linked to her disappearance. The last time Harmony can be accounted for, according to investigators, is late 2019.
To be honest, I feel like he sold her.
Crystal is asking for help from the public.
If you know anything about my baby, please, I'm begging you to come forward so she can come home.
Investigators have also been asking for people to call in with tips that could lead to Harmony's whereabouts. Right now, the reward money is up to over $90,000. In Manchester, New Hampshire, Michael Rosenfield, NBC 10 Boston.
And investigators were seen resuming their search today for the little girl at a home on Guilford Street. Police say they were focusing on one house in particular because, quote, it was the last location where Harmony was known to reside before her disappearance in 2019. If you have any information, you're asked to call Manchester Police.
Have you followed the case of Harmony Montgomery at all? It's this little girl out of New Hampshire. She's been missing for 2 years. So she was 5 when she was last seen. She'd be 7 now. But there's a lot of... It's one of those cases where pretty much everybody knows what happened. They just can't wrap their head around where she is, if they're accurate. It's really...
Is that the one where I believe the principal of her school was interviewed? Is that the same? I've looked at several cases recently. And did she have like siblings, and the siblings told the principal that like she asked about her and she started crying?
I don't know if that's the same case or not. There's a couple of these going on, but this is so Harmony's case. She was last seen in October of 2019, and police and family services have been called to her home. But the police say they only recently learned that she's been missing for more than 2 years. They haven't confirmed like any kind of custody records, and I like what you're saying sounds familiar, like it's related to this. There was an issue because their home had been sold, and the new owner is allowing them to search it, but I went online trying to figure out what was happening with it, and it's not to the point yet where I can really wrap my head around it. Mom's on social media saying coming for you, and there's an uncle that says that he doesn't believe that she'll be found alive. Now, he is the one who called the police that I was aware of, the uncle is. And that was because in July of 2019, when he saw her, the uncle said she had a black eye. And then again in October 19th of 2019, he called the police. But that's the last day that anyone saw her alive, as far as the case currently stands. I was interested in this case, but then I was watching something yesterday on I don't want to say news, but it was news-ish. It wasn't one of the main shows or whatever. Callahan Walsh was talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it said missing persons expert under his name. Do you know who Callahan Walsh is?
Of course I know who he is.
Okay, I figured, but I just looked at that and I was like, okay.
I have no comment on recording about that at all.
I just was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like this is on and it was something national. It was like a morning news thing within the last day or two that I saw, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe
that's a really good example of sort of the bubble we live in, or the bubble other people live in, and I think that we would be the ones that seem out of line for sort of.
Oh yeah, if I pointed anything out about it, I feel
saying that, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes, and of course this isn't a joke, but sometimes if you tell a really funny joke and people don't understand it, like they just didn't deserve to understand it.
Well,
I mean, that doesn't sound very nice, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
if you're telling a funny joke and it's funny, and then, the people who aren't laughing, well, that's just, They're missing out, but there's not a lot you can do about it.
I was on Facebook doing something completely innocent. It wasn't even true crime related when it started. And for some reason, somebody started a rant about a notebook being found near Brian Laundrie's body and how they were so glad that the FBI was investigating Gabby Petito's death and all of those things. And I was like, that case is closed. I was like, I know that they will say they're investigating and there might be a couple of things outstanding, but like that case is
is absolutely closed.
Like they're not even thinking about that case anymore. They want you to stop talking about it, so they're not going to give you any more tidbits.
Her case her case is closed. And I'm sorry, I was incorrect about when we were talking about Harmony. I had another little girl in mind. Her name is Oakley Carlson. She's something happened with her, and the principal came to visit, and she was asking one of her siblings where something happened, and the little girl said Oakley no longer exists or something like that. It was really crazy, but that wasn't Harmony. I'm sorry.
Is she the little girl that somebody said she got eaten by wolves or coyotes or something? I know that sounds terrible.
She's in Washington. I actually don't know about that.
I thought it was one of her siblings that
she's
told.
She's a 5-year-old that is also missing. And what I had was like a timeline of events from her case. I don't know about I don't know if anybody's alleged she's eaten by wolves. But so I will say in these children's missing persons cases, Harmony's case, Harmony and her brother were in and out of foster homes. Blair Miller, the adoptive father of Harmony's younger brother, so her younger brother was adopted, was not notified that Harmony was missing until I guess she was in foster care. I'm not following this entirely. Harmony, she would be 7 years old now, and she was reported missing last week, but she's not been seen in 2 years. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's about right. She was reported missing at the end of 2021, but nobody had seen her since October 2019.
Okay, and so Blaine Miller, who is Harmony's younger brother's adopted father, is having a hard time understanding it, and they're trying to retrace the paperwork to understand the situation. And so here's like my sort of thing is, when you've got a child, especially, we've talked about this extensively during different episodes, if their caregiver does not report them missing, like you pretty much have the answer to the question of what happened to them, or at least you have the answer of who holds that answer. Now, the problem with this is it's not entirely clear who had custody of her, because she and her brother were in and out of foster care before her brother was adopted. And I'm having trouble sort of following it. Harmony was visually impaired.
Yeah, she's blind in her right eye.
And she's from Manchester, New Hampshire. She's just reported missing, and it was 2 years after she was last seen. And they're basing that off of a police response to a home in Manchester in October 2019.
Right.
I assume part of releasing this would be like to perhaps, any additional accounts of her being alive or whatever would come out. I'm having a hard time following. There were definitely custody issues between Harmony's parents before she was in and out of the foster care situation. The belief of some sort of bystanders that Harmony had been living with her father throughout the pandemic. Now, we talked about this sort of at the beginning of summer, where we had that really crazy week that Xavier Harrelson went missing and the little boy was found in Nevada.
Yeah.
But anyway, we talked about what are we going to find when this pandemic, the isolation of the pandemic opens back up? Because, You're going to be with the little boy in Nevada. They were asking for like grandparents and aunts and uncles to be on the lookout because, you know, there was some evidence to indicate that this child was killed by its primary caregiver, right? And that case ended up coming to light and eventually being solved because I believe a family friend
recognized the kid
and realized that they weren't aware of the kid's status. Like, you know, she hadn't seen him in a while. But
well, that's the reason I brought this one up. Was I was just going to point out that like the pandemic is cracking. I was going to point out the pandemic is sort of cracking as far as we're starting to see cases that were happening literally behind closed doors during lockdown sort of come to light. And it's fascinating to me.
And, you know, my concern from that was like, once schools shut down, which, you know, across the United States, March 15th, all public schools stopped in-person educational experiences, March 15th, 2020. And then it's sort of up in the air. Like, my son does virtual school, so I don't really know like what's happening with schools now, but
right.
It seems to be kind of crazy, but mandated reporters, all teachers are mandated reporters of any sort of child abuse or neglect. And they're supposed to sort of keep track of children in that if one fell off the face of the earth, somebody at school would notice. I've had experiences that have made me not entirely trust that. But it was concerning when school shut down because a lot of kids depended on a lot of things that, you know, happened in school. For example, free food, free breakfast and lunch that, you know, they may not otherwise get. And then, of course, the concern that we thought about our wheelhouse doing the show was you've got no outside mandated reporters coming into contact with these children. And so how many of them would fall off the face of the earth? And we're so far out on this, I can't even get a good grip beyond somebody's recollection of who had custody of this child. And it doesn't look great. So I hope they find her. I hope this is a misunderstanding, which, I mean, that seems like that would be the best outcome here, is if it's just a misunderstanding. But I don't feel like this is going to end well.
Yeah, I don't know how this one's going to go. It's just one of those I'm mentioning because it was sort of, as far as I'm concerned, if there is a crime, I don't think it's going to be a recent crime. I think this is going to be something that happened back during the pandemic. I mean, in theory, this little girl could be alive, and like we could see her pop up sometime relatively soon.
Seems like there's enough neutral parties here there that whoever has her in custody would let somebody know.
Yeah, you would think that. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I understand like custody battles and everything, but when you're talking about the welfare of a child, if you don't want to talk to the other parent of the child, and you know, once the police are involved, you should definitely tell them.
This isn't like the case we're covering today, but I want to point it out that there's probably going to be more like this, not just with kids. I don't think these are small children. You mentioned Oakley, I mentioned Harmony. These are like 5-year-old girls. I have a feeling we'll find even older people.
I think there's going to be a whole wave of sort of it, and they'll all be unsolved just under the dynamic of, you know, people who died or disappeared during the pandemic, and it's going to take a long time for them to surface, I think, because I'm not especially concerned about anybody in my life just because I haven't heard from them.
Yeah.
It seems like nobody's hearing from anybody these days, and I feel like that's going to be tremendously compounded. Either if it doesn't get back to normal, at least when the new normal arrives, we're going to have a lot of cases possibly shrouded in sort of a mystery. And the time that's elapsed is going to be, it's not going to be helpful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, cases like this have gone on for a while. Like Zaya Baker was one of the biggest cases for me, and it was similar to some of those. Erica Parsons, I don't know if you remember that case, but
Yeah,
she
I
was
do.
missing I think she was missing for a total of about 5 years. And there was so much that went on, like sort of legally speaking, surrounding that case. I read a really interesting Florida case, sort of. It's actually an Indiana case that ends in Florida. Did you hear about the missing couple that turned up with an unidentified baby?
It seems like maybe I did. It's not on the forefront of my mind though.
Oh, it's not on anybody's mind because it just dropped off the news. So there was a lot of clickbait articles about it, and it basically said missing couple from Johnson County in Indiana, where they were essentially on the run, I guess, but they had been reported missing from Indiana. They turned up down in De Leon Springs in Florida, and they had a stolen van and an unidentified baby. But this is, if you go to Click Orlando, they were covering it right before Christmas, and I'm mentioning it here because I was going to clear up some like December stuff, but this is one of the ones I just wanted to mention is sort of new. But their names are Lincoln Germana, he's 28, and Amanda Germana, she's 26. Deputies in Johnson County, Indiana, alerted the Volusia County Sheriff's Office that a cell phone belonging to the couple had pinged in the area. Investigators said the two were returning to a stolen Penske moving van, which had a license plate stolen from another cargo van. They had a stroller with them. But family members told detectives that Amanda Germana had a miscarriage during her most recent pregnancy and had not, to their knowledge, given birth since then, making it unclear to whom the baby belonged. Investigators say they surrounded the vehicle, ordered the couple out. Once both were secured, they searched the vehicle and found the baby in the cargo area of the van in a car seat secured with a bungee cord. Records show that there were several items inside the cargo area that were not secured properly and could have injured the infant. They added that the van had a foul odor due to the amount of dirty clothes and soiled diapers inside. At the time of her arrest, investigators said that Amanda Germana spontaneously said the child was not hers. They added that Lincoln Germana said that the child's name was Emmanuel Rodriguez, but Amanda Germana called the baby John. They said since the arrest, the couple has claimed the child is theirs, explaining it was a home birth, so there's no records. Deputies said they're going to be using DNA to determine the child's parentage. The infant is being cared for by the Department of Children and Family Services, pending investigations in Florida. Both face a charge of child neglect, and Lincoln Germana also faces a charge of grand theft. Here's what's crazy about this case. It just drops. For now, it just stopped. It just fell right off the radar. And I was thinking this was going to be an interesting one to watch. Like, more information was really going to come out. There's been a few tidbits here and there, but I am so curious. How did these people in their stolen moving van have a baby?
Well,
nobody knows whose it is.
Well, I would say that they probably stole it or bought it. And so, my immediate question is, well, like, is there a baby reported missing? And in the event that it's not, I would say they probably bought it. But so they were reported missing by Lincoln's mother. And they were reported missing at the beginning of just around December 10th, I think. The reason she reported them missing is because she was concerned about their 3-year-old that they had left behind.
Oh my gosh.
And so I assume that their 3-year-old daughter was with the grandmother, who is the Lincoln's mother. Okay. Now, I feel like we're not going to be hearing anything about this because this is a very, very tragic case of what sort of happens, I think, when you lose a baby and you can't quite process it.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel like it's going to be like dragged out in any sort of fashion because they need help. Hopefully little baby Emmanuel Rodriguez, or John, I guess,
Well, hopefully,
this is just crazy.
It is crazy.
Hopefully, he's returned to his rightful parents. It even seems like in the process of like being taken into custody and then being in custody, like they seem to be seesawing on their positions here because the baby's not theirs, and then like they did have the baby. It was a home birth. There's no record. I have a feeling the baby's name probably isn't actually Emmanuel Rodriguez, but it's what they said.
Well, I hope that baby finds its real name again. That's what I hope.
Right. If there's not a baby reported missing and, none of the hospitals went online, and I guess because they went from Indiana to Florida, you would need to be looking pretty much everywhere. I don't know how long of a period of time transpired, but it seems like they dropped their 3-year-old at grandma's and then they took off. Somewhere along the way, they picked up a baby. And
there's no way you cannot logic your way out of this. I'm serious. I tried.
But like clearly there was a lot of delusional things happening here, right?
I assume drugs are mental illness. I don't know that to be a fact, but like looking at this, so you go missing after dropping your kid off in Indiana, getting rid of your kid. I mean, I'm just saying you leave the kid so that you can go somewhere else. Well, no, that's not even it. Like, that can't be how this starts. This is like a Coen Brothers movie. It starts with the moving van that apparently is stolen to the point that they had to switch license tags, which that almost sounds like a crackhead move. Like, hey, you want to borrow my van? I'll give you $20, or you give me $20 or whatever. It sounds like craziness happening, but you drop the kid off and I guess you're going on vacation. I'm going to put that in some air quotes for us all. Vacation.
Who doesn't take their 3-year-old on vacation with them?
Well, okay. I have been on vacation without my, without small people. But my point in this instance is, I think it would be rare for someone to go on vacation from Indiana to Florida, where they leave the one kid in Florida, but then they decide, you know what, we miss our kids so much, we're just going to stop on the side of the road and grab another. That's a pretty weird part to all of this.
Yeah, I don't think. I think it's going to come out that everything about this seems like it could have been a legitimate adoption if they had just gone a different way, maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, I'm not entirely certain. It seems like somebody would. There's no excuse for not noticing a tiny baby's missing. Okay, they rely on their parents for literally everything. So.
Yeah, this was
one
of those.
Somebody knows that child is missing.
There was no way for me to skim that headline and understand what was going on. I read it and I was like, it was like missing couple found in stolen van in Florida with unidentified baby or something like that. And I was like, wait a second.
I think that you sent that to me and I think I literally skipped it because I was like, nope, not today.
Not today, Satan.
Because, I have a lot of sympathy for these people though. And I hope that they, if somebody did willingly give them the baby, you cannot buy babies. That's illegal. But, I hope that if it is a situation where somebody that was willingly giving up the child to people who seem like they wanted the child, I hope that somebody helps them and they get it done in a way that will stick. I, however, have to acknowledge the fact that they are charged with child neglect. And I think that might hinder legitimate adoption procedures.
They already have a child at home.
Well,
all they got to do is go back and pick it up.
That's going to be a different issue. But I feel like you might be missing the point that it's not that they didn't want the one child. It's that they wanted the baby. And I'm going to go ahead and guess that whenever her miscarriage was, around the time they dropped the baby, the toddler off with grandma is probably around the due date.
Yeah, I was actually gonna wrap this up by saying I bet this is postpartum disorder, and I bet that it's like no matter what I think about whatever else is going on, I bet that guy had his hands full trying to figure out because she could like people can legitimately go out of their mind when things like that happen.
Well, right. And it's, obviously she physically experienced it, but emotionally and mentally, I mean, the child was his too.
Oh, absolutely. Regardless of me judging them from here, they've got the same last name, which means they have taken the steps to have some sort of relationship and to be married.
And they have a child.
And they have a 3-year-old. So that gives you sort of a timeline on their things. And the truth is, after I skim something like that and I go back and read it, try and figure it out, and I see that like it's sort of being blasted across the internet, I feel really terrible for those guys. And
I hope they get the help that they need.
I hope they get, yes, that's exactly it. I hope whatever they need in their life right now, I hope that somehow it is brought to them.
I don't necessarily think it's a baby though.
And I'm not reading this one, but I want to mention this. Did you see the Operation Boodat was still active in New Orleans? Okay, this is one of those things, it pervades like social media when this happens. Like, it's one of those things that pops up and it's like 45 missing children found in trailer. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Of course, yes. I know exactly what you're talking about.
This one, it was something like 5 missing girls found in months-long New Orleans Operation Boodat 2021, which they've run this multiple years. But this is one of those things, like, it runs from, like, October through, like, basically, it runs from almost Labor Day to Christmas because they get the operations up and running around Labor Day, and they really start making arrests and whatever else they're going to do around Halloween. And then it lasts until Christmas. But the reason I bring this one up is because my clay suspect is in this. I don't know if you saw that, but he was, I'm not going to say what year, but he's been a part in 2 of these type arrests. And
it sounds like that somebody needs to reevaluate what they're sentencing him to.
How can I say that? He's getting off on minor violations of previous agreements right now. I'm going to leave it at that. But this is one of those things, like if you read the headlines, it sounds like they found 15 people in a trailer somewhere that were all being trafficked by some organized crime group. And that's not exactly what's happening.
I don't think that, I like to think that it's not purposefully being presented that way. I like to think that it's
it's a media choice, I think.
And it's sort of like our vacuum understanding of how, and when I say our, I mean the collective our, like the consumers of media, right? It's our understanding of sort of what happens. And it's a task force working an extended period of time. And they are, I hate to be this way as well, but recovering missing and endangered teenagers, it's great. It's
important work, yeah.
I'm so glad that they got them back. Ridding the world of missing and endangered teenagers, like before they get to that point, is like an even better target, because the things that these kids go through mess them up. Because we're talking about sex trafficking, basically. It's kids that run away and then they encounter these losers that feel like they can profit from their vulnerability, sex traffic them, and they make money off of it or whatever. When a child leaves home and they have no way to support themselves, and at first somebody seems really nice and they're going to give them a place to stay and food to eat, and then before they know it, they're in way over their heads and they realize that but then it's too late. They're in over their heads. And so that particular situation, like, good job for the marshals who, did this. But I think that a lot of times the damage is done. I haven't really, if we were to follow these victims anonymously to sort of see how their life went, I think it would have been better for them to have never ended up in this position to begin with.
That was weird. The power just went out and it didn't come back up immediately. And then you and I had other things in our schedule. So now we're back in here. There was a couple of things from Christmas that like you wanted to clear up. I thought they were interesting enough to like include them so that people who have heard if you've heard the Christmas episodes, the next two things are about the Christmas episodes.
Right. So the first one, in episode 1, the Simmons family murders, I thought it was relevant, and I actually started to say it, and then I didn't end up saying it, and we sort of got off track. If you'll, recall that the Simmons family, Gene Simmons killed 16 people on, like, right around Christmas, and a lot of them were his family members, and he had an inappropriate relationship with his daughter, yielding a grandchild named Sylvia. And one of the things I wanted to mention was that part of the sort of catalyst of the breakdown was that Sheila Marie had actually gotten pregnant with a second baby by her father, Gene Simmons. And when that occurred, I want to say Sylvia was maybe 3.
Oh, wow.
And he took her to get an abortion. And that's actually when she broke loose of him. And, I think Dennis McNulty was already sort of in the picture.
Oh, okay.
But like after that, like, cause he forced her to have an abortion, he was already paranoid about the fact that, Sylvia was his daughter and granddaughter
Right.
by his oldest daughter. And so I just wanted to mention that. So she did get pregnant a second time, and he freaked out, and because he was already afraid he was going to get in trouble.
So then this was the other. So it's not the Bruce Pardo case. It's the other case where the father showed up from his foreclosed house, right? That's what this other one is referencing.
And his name, they referred to him as Pack and Heat Bob. He actually, I was also going to bring this up, but I failed to. He went to his ex-wife's house or apartment on Christmas. He was the second Santa case that we covered, and her his ex-wife, or his estranged wife, and her sister, his brother-in-law, and their daughter, and then his 2 kids and estranged wife. They were all there. He killed them all. And he had thrown down a gun close to his brother-in-law. And like, it was thought that he was trying to make it look like his brother-in-law had done it. And that was quickly dispelled because of however they did the investigation. But I thought that was kind of important because if you'll recall, that part of the problem in that whole situation was that his brother-in-law had ratted him out or told on him or whatever about him seeing prostitutes. And he had a lot of vengeance towards his brother-in-law because, according to him, his brother-in-law was doing it with him. And he never denied that he was doing it. He just felt slighted because his brother-in-law told his wife, who then told her sister, who was Pack and Heat Bob's wife, right? And so she found out, and she left him. But that was only part of the reason why, but it sort of started it. But so that gives a little bit of a... to me, it just was an important detail because it gives it a little bit of a slant in that, like, not only did he want to do this, like, he also wanted his brother-in-law to be blamed for it. it didn't work, but he had thrown down like an additional gun, or
Right.
he had put another gun in the mix. And I believe that they checked, and like the brother-in-law didn't have any, signs of actually firing a gun that morning.
Probably no gunpowder residue or anything like that on him.
Right.
But the people that we're referencing here, I know you're calling him Pack and Heat Bob, which is his name in
That's what
several of the
everyone
witness
called
interviews.
him.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it was a couple of people, but his name is Aziz Yazdan Pana, and then his brother-in-law would have been Mohammed Hussein Zaraya. This is a case that took place down in Grapevine, Texas. If you look up the Grapevine Christmas killings, you can find this. There's actually somewhere online, and I did not source it and put it into that episode, but there was like a 90-page police report that I got part of when I got some other, and it was one of those cases we were doing so many of them, I didn't go back and get like the whole 90-page report, but this was a good find by you, and I kind of stepped on it when we were recording it because I was trying to keep everything in order. And I didn't want to leave these two details out, the one about Simmons and this one about Pack and Heat Bob, because I felt like it kind of went to motive.
Right, especially with Sheila Marie's second, pregnancy by her father. He was at that point so paranoid he was going to get in trouble that he had her have an abortion.
Right. And as you just explained in the second tidbit there, Pack and Heat Bob wanted a little revenge on his brother-in-law, even though he took it out on the whole family. I do think trying to pin it on his brother-in-law was like, maybe not motive, but it was the one last, poke at that whole situation, which is terrible. But I did want to clear that up because I don't like to leave things just like left when we had something we wanted to put in. And I do so much of that. I was telling you, I think I forget more than I remember to record by the time we're done looking at a case. So in this instance, I definitely wanted to address those two particular things. The case is there's a case that we wanted to cover today that's sort of started to get more media attention. This is a case it's about 10 years ago. What's interesting about this case for me is that it got a flurry of media activity last year, and I think some of the bigger podcasts and stuff covered it, but I didn't really listen to them, but I got some overviews from people, and people were asking me what I thought of this case on social media. Somebody sent me a note, and I apologize, I don't know who that was, but they asked me what I thought of this and which direction I thought it went. So at some point when I saw that, I sort of I shared it with you, Meg, and then I went online and I pulled up some kind of bare bones stuff to see what it looked like back then. And this is 2011. And then what it looked like, because the 11th anniversary of this is coming up. It's coming up on January the 26th. So it's this month. Well, I pulled up what I could find and I went a little bit deeper, but I don't know if it's going to be the direction that people would really want to go with this. This is a case that, I'm always shocked at some cases having their own little Wikipedia entry. I don't know if you know what I mean, but sometimes it takes forever to find information. But this looks like the family has worked pretty hard to keep this in the public eye. This is the January 26, 2011 death. I'm going to say death for the moment, of a young woman in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was a 27-year-old first grade teacher at local academy there. Her name was Ellen Ray Greenberg. She was an only child who had been born in New York City to Joshua and Sandra Greenberg. And honestly, Joshua and Sandra they've gone a pretty long way and spent what looks like a lot of money to figure out what happened to their daughter because they weren't really satisfied with the original investigation. There's not much to this original investigation because on January 26, 2011, a blizzard hit Philadelphia, of all things. So Ellen Greenberg was at the school that she worked at. She left work and she returned to her apartment. She lived there with her fiance. Now, she's Ellen Greenberg, and her fiance is Sam Goldberg. Sam Goldberg, he is a television producer. At the time, I believe he was working with NBC, and later he moved over to do, it's either golf.com or the Golf Channel. So at approximately 6:40 p.m. that evening, Ellen ends up pronounced dead with more than 20 stab wounds, including at least 10 to her back and neck. And she has 11 bruises in various stages of resolution on her right arm, abdomen, and right leg. The case here, okay, so what happens is the fiance calls the police come, there's an autopsy, but the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, while they initially rule this case as a homicide, the Philadelphia Police Department the following day backtracks and states that it's not been ruled a homicide, but they are considering that the manner of death is suspicious at this time. And in February of 2011, they reverse course altogether, and they say that the case is officially ruled a suicide. This gets weird. Her parents start saying there's no way that this is a suicide. And over the course of several years, it gets a little bit of media attention, and the parents push for a lot of different forensic experts to weigh in and give opinions, including Cyril Wecht, well-known Pittsburgh, local forensic pathologist who famously challenged the single bullet theory of the John F. Kennedy assassination. He reviewed the case and determined it was strongly suspicious of homicide. On March 15th of 2019, the Philadelphia Inquirer put out a front-page investigative report. With Cyril Wecht, he said, I don't know how they wrote this off as a suicide, and also Henry Lee weighed in, who I go back and forth on him. He's famously a forensic scientist who testified for the defense in the O.J. Simpson murder trial. He reviewed the case files and concluded that the number and types of wounds and blood stain patterns observed were consistent with a homicide scene. There was a significant point of contention, which was a couple of stab wounds that had penetrated Ellen Greenberg's brain. Dr. Wayne Ross wrote that the stab wounds to the brain and the spinal cord would have caused severe pain, cranial nerve dysfunction, and traumatic brain injuries. The original medical report stated that neuropathologist Dr. Lucy York Adams determined there was no such wound. However, when the Philadelphia Inquirer went and found Dr. Rourke, she revealed that she did not observe Ellen Greenberg's body, and she confirmed that she could not find any records, bills, invoices, reports of any type of examination. So we don't really know what happened there. So in October of 2019, Ellen Greenberg's parents had filed a civil suit against the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office and Dr. Marlon Osborne, the pathologist who conducted the autopsy, with the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. The suit seeks to change the manner of death to either homicide or undetermined, citing new information. And the fact that Dr. Osborne admitted to changing the manner of death because of the insistence of the police department. There's a new technology that they took it's not new, but they used it in an interesting way here, sort of a new way. It's called photogrammetry, where they created a 3D anatomical recreation of Ellen's wounds, demonstrating that not all 20 wounds seemed to be where they could be self-inflicted. They scored a significant legal victory in January of 2020 when the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas allowed the case to proceed past the medical examiner's office motion to dismiss, and they set a trial for 2021. So this case kind of became like a big deal in the true crime community in 2019 and 2020. It was featured on Dr. Oz. People Magazine has run a pretty big panel on it. 48 Hours, Inside Edition, the Philadelphia Inquirer, CBS Philadelphia, Good Day Philadelphia, ABC Harrisburg, CBS Harrisburg, Penn Live, the Oxygen Network has covered it. The Daily Mail has covered it. Freak TV, which is a Portuguese television channel, has covered it. And Law.com has covered it. It was also the lead episode in the second season of the true crime television show Accident, Suicide, or Murder. And a number of podcasts have talked about this, including Criminology, Sinisterhood, Catch My Killer, Generation Y, Strange and Unexplained, Rachel Shannon's YouTube channel, Killer Podcast, GRWM, Late Night Crimecast, Sideline Sleuths, and a bunch of other nonsense that you guys all know. And I'm telling you, the coverage on this case, as much as thorough as it has been, is all on. I think it's wrong. That's the only reason I'm looking at this today. It was mentioned, could you take a look at this? Specifically, I think this will remain an undetermined death.
Did it actually get changed to undetermined?
That's what they're pushing for now. But so these people that are all covering it, the main reason that they're covering it, which you and I recently talked about this, is new evidence was submitted where essentially what we just talked about got pushed forward to the Philadelphia Attorney General's office in 2021. And it's not a lot of new evidence. I just want to point that part out. It's not a lot of things that are very interesting, but there were a couple of items that stood out to you and I. Like, we looked at them and we were like, okay, that's enough to talk about. The first thing was they end up submitting the surveillance footage from the apartment that day. I don't know where they got it. I don't know where it's been, but somehow the surveillance footage is now being considered as part of the case file
by the Attorney General.
By the Attorney General. Like, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that.
So, just to sort of interject here, so what happened was, like you said, after her death, initially it was thought to be a homicide. It was then switched to a suicide. Now, the medical examiner's office is the authority on manner of death and cause of death, for that matter. But in this particular case, we're talking about a manner of death. And when the options for manners of death are homicide, suicide, accidental, undetermined, I think that might be about it, right?
Yeah. So natural, accidental, homicide,
yeah,
suicide. That's really it.
Okay. And so from there, because the manner of death establishes the case as far as like law enforcement goes, it establishes the case on a path, right?
Right.
A natural death is not going to continue to be investigated. A suicide is not going to continue to be investigated. A homicide has to be investigated. Undetermined and accidental, it varies. It depends on the circumstances. And there was pressure, apparently there was pressure applied from the investigating law enforcement agency to the medical examiner to change the cause of death from homicide to suicide. Now, I have several interesting points about this, but it sort of boils down to some semantics, and I haven't completely figured out what I think about this case. I mean, I have some pretty strong opinions, but what do you think about it?
Well, it's very difficult to dissect this case. So anytime something happens in the shadow of sort of a superseding event, I'm interested. And that means there were cases that were sort of in the shadow of 9/11 that I will never stop poking at. Whenever I see something about them, I have to read it. It just catches my attention and I'm like, what's going on? This one, I really wanted to know why there was the homicide versus suicide debate in the first place. You found some documents. People have cribbed these together. You can actually find them at Philly.com and the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Right now, you can just put her name in and all this stuff because it's right in the forefront of mainstream media. Because there was just a media release from her parents' attorneys.
Yeah, here's what I did. I went on. You had sent me a couple of different versions of PDFs of sort of the collection, and this is what I'm going to use to talk about today. I'm going to skip the overall report of the examination about the actual wounds for a second. I am going to talk about part of them, but I'm going to use just the top 2 pages, what the City of Philadelphia's Office of the Medical Examiner was looking at originally. And I do think the parents maybe have, I applaud them for their efforts here. I'm not sure if they're suing the right people or not. I can't tell.
Oh, that's what, I'm sorry. I got sidetracked and I didn't finish. But so there was pressure applied to the ME to change it to suicide. And so this happened in 2011. That's right?
February 2011, yeah.
No, January 26th,
Oh,
2011.
okay, but the pressure was applied in February. I was just pointing out the proximity date.
Within a few days after. But so the recourse to that was because the medical examiner has the authority to make the manner of death determination. And once it was ruled suicide, like that's it, right? So her parents have struggled through, the system sort of, and they landed on an attorney who basically is suing the medical examiner's office to change the cause of death to at least undetermined. And it's taken I don't know how straight the path here was, because it's an interesting thing that this even comes into play. The fact that the police department put pressure on the medical examiner's office is, I would say, probably not extraordinarily uncommon, but the fact that it's a common piece of knowledge of this case, that is where it becomes a little weird for me. How does everybody know that the police put pressure? Well, everybody knows because the doctor said the reason I changed it was because the police told me to.
Yeah, it's not really as sinister as I think some people are making it sound. And I'm not saying you. No, I'm saying some of the presentation. I think anytime something happens, there was a blizzard going on. I think the truth is there was some stuff here that maybe they didn't do and couldn't get to, and they went with what was available. So I have some of the police reports. I didn't go through a lot of the police reports here because I'm really interested in what the medical examiner has to say. So I was going to take what you just said and kind of springboard off that to give people the story. And you can find all this on the internet. I'm not telling you a brand new version of it, but I am going to summarize this for how they get there and where I think the legal side of this is going. If you've never seen an investigation report by a medical examiner before, it's not the actual autopsy report. It's sort of the elements that they think are established. The origin and the details of this, a detective from the homicide unit at the police department in Philadelphia called at 7:53 p.m. to report the death of Ellen R. Greenberg. She was found in her apartment with a knife in her chest. So you got a homicide detective calling it in. At the scene, the medical examiner's rep states that they arrived to the scene at around 8:27. They were met by 5th District police officers who were holding the log. And so when you get to a crime scene, if they're doing everything correctly, there is a literal log being held by an officer who's typically either a patrol officer or a what would be called a line officer. And that person is just making sure that they keep up with everyone who comes and goes from the scene in the way that it's been cordoned off. There are multiple detectives listed here. I'm not going to go through all their names. The detectives meet this person at the scene a short time later, and they also meet the fiance. Some of his family and some of his friends have started to gather. The decedent's fiance is Sam Goldberg. He reportedly left her in her apartment sometime around 4:45 to go to the gym, and he returned between 5:15 and 5:30. He wasn't able to get into the apartment. He opened the door with his keys, but the door was secured from the inside. He proceeded to try and contact the decedent by text message, telephone, and email for about an hour, and then forced entry into the apartment. And this is actually, even though I'm reading from the medical examiner's report, the next sentence is one of the things that's sort of protested against. An apartment security man was reportedly present during the entry. He immediately discovered her, called 911, and I don't know who the he is there. It's either the apartment security man or it's Sam Goldberg in terms of this narrative, but there is a question as to whether or not the apartment security man was actually there. He, whoever that was, immediately discovered her and called 911. He was instructed to start CPR, and then he noticed a knife in her chest. He was instructed to stop. And then basically the Philadelphia Fire Department had a medic respond. He pronounced death at That medic unit responded and pronounced death at 6:40. So that's a pretty tight timeline. Basically, he leaves his apartment at 4:45, and she is pronounced dead at 6:40. So the location of the death is in the kitchen of the decedent's apartment, which is located at the Venice Loft Apartments. It's a 2-bedroom apartment on the 6th floor. Obviously, they share it. This is the fiance and the decedent share the apartment. The apartment is well kept. It's clean. The inside lock to the front door has a common latch or solid bar door guard. It's broken with the screws on the door loose, which means it was obviously forced in when in a locked position. Throughout the entire apartment, there's no evidence of a struggle. Furniture and other items appear in place. Nothing is obviously missing or disturbed. There are numerous valuables present and in sight. Money, keys, laptop computers. Then they document the laptop computers that are laying around. Appears to be the decedent's, as evidenced by wedding material in the apartment and on the computers. The decedent is a teacher. There is no note found indicative of suicide on the computers or in the rest of the apartment. The only way to exit the apartment with the front doorway locked is through a rear slider to a patio that is 6 stories high. There's snow present with no tracks and no footprints. It appears to be completely undisturbed. The ambient temperature inside the apartment reads 69 degrees Fahrenheit. They're reading off a thermostat on the wall. And the incident has occurred during a winter snowstorm. So it goes on to complete the narrative related to the body in the vicinity here. Prescription medications are recovered from a bedstand located in the master bedroom. The prescriber was a doctor named Ellen Berman, and she had prescribed 3 different medications. These are all mental health meds. A paper booklet is in the decedent's pocketbook that's on a chair at the living room island. It appears to be a journal of her medication and her state of mind while taking the medication. Last dated January the 16th, 10 days earlier, and it says see evidence for details. The decedent's cell phone is in the master bedroom, and a review of her call and message log reveals the last outgoing call was to a redacted number on 1/26/11 at 14:33 with a duration of 30 seconds. So that's going to be her last phone call, where he had gone at 4:45 to the gym. Her last phone call was at 2:33. This is her last outgoing call. It lasted 30 seconds. The last missed call was to a number programmed in the phone. Additional missed calls from a programmed number from the phone came in on that date, 1/26/2011, between 17:30 and 17:42. And then the programmed number for Venice Lofts, which is their apartment building, essentially front desk or gym phones, that phones you can pick up and dial. They came in between 18:07 and 18:10. Then the last outgoing text went out at 3:47, but it was actually 10 days earlier. It says 1:16. I don't know if it means 1:26 or if she literally hadn't sent a text message since 10 days earlier. But this would not have been a time when texting was as common, if you remember. It was starting to be really common, but it wasn't quite as common as it is today. Then it lists last incoming text and an email from a programmed contact, meaning programmed contact just means that someone has taken the time to put a number or other contact information under a slot in your address book. So when it comes in, it actually reads as their name. And this says that it read as Sam Goldberg. This was on January 26, 2011, between 5:32 and 5:54. So there are 9 messages here. The first one says hello. The second one says open the door. 3 says what are you doing? 4 says I'm getting pissed. 5 says hello. 6 says you better have an excuse. 7 says what the fuck. 8 says AHHH, like ah. And 9 says you have no idea. The decedent is on the hardwood kitchen floor located just inside the door entrance. She's found supine with her head and some of her upper body / shoulders resting against the lower half of the white kitchen cabinets that are next to the range. Her body, starting with her head, is facing north, her legs west.
She is clad in a zipped up dark colored shirt over top a t-shirt, gray sweatpants. She has underwear and light brown Ugg boots on. A pair of eyeglasses are on the floor to the right of the decedent. A white towel is grasped in her left hand, and a hair tie or a scrunchie is on her right wrist. She has no other personal effects on the body. Upon further examination, the decedent has a knife embedded in her left chest through her clothing. There are multiple stab wounds examined at the scene, at the chest where the knife is located. There are a few superficial wounds grouped nearby, one to the left upper chest near the clavicle. There are two more in the mid-chest between and just below the breasts. There are defects to the shirt consistent with the underlying wounds. There are no defense injuries to the hands, wrists, or forearms. The right hand is closed in a loose fist. Postmortem findings at arrival at 2027 and 2155 are the same. So basically, time the investigator got there at 8:27 until 8:55, nothing has changed. The body is mostly flaccid. The hands appear to be slightly stiff. The body's cool to the touch of the extremities, warm to the touch of the torso, front and back. Lividity is inconspicuous, meaning it's not set. The findings are consistent with the current position of the body. Blood is present on the head, in the hair, and on the neck. The right hand has blood on it. On the front side of the shirt, along the pants on the front side and the top of her boots is blood. The right boot has blood on the sole. The blood around her is generally confined to the area of the body on the floor underneath and on the face of the cabinets behind her. There's one small blood splatter that is on a cabinet to the left of the body, and two separate drops of blood splatter are on the granite countertop above her. And they reference pictures that they've taken of this. There are two kitchen knives in the sink adjacent to the body. They're free of blood or tissue. The sink underneath is dry, bears no evidence of blood or tissue. A knife block on the counter between the sink and the range is turned over on its side. The three utensils there are a spatula, fork, and a paring knife. They have no evidence of being involved in this. No blood, no tissue. The knife in her body is consistent with the knife set found in the sink and in the block. So at this point, they shut everything down. Uniform police make a brief canvass during this snow event that's been going on. And they interview Sam Goldberg. They interview the Greenbergs. They interview the psychiatrist. Overall, what they find is that she had been seeing a shrink. The parents don't think the kid had anything, that the fiance had anything to do with it. And she has no previous attempts at suicide or ideation. In general, and I don't want to get super specific with the wounds here. I do want to talk, there's some weird bruises that need to be brought up at some point. But they don't find any reason for her to have been killed or for her to have committed suicide. It's pretty much an undetermined death that, in my opinion, having seen a lot of like this type of information, it would be very difficult for it to go beyond any kind of undetermined death. She does not have any drugs in her system other than what's been prescribed to her. And they have basically decided they have no reason to suspect the fiance. You thought it was a chain on the door, but it's actually a little door guard that it's like one of those things you flip from the inside.
Right. No, I said for you to think door chain.
Okay,
I didn't know
gotcha.
how else to describe it because
I gotcha.
So, part of this was I feel like one of the main factors of this entire situation is you've got a 6th floor apartment, or at least if you jumped off the balcony, it's 6 stories down, right? That's how they described it. And there's snow on the ground, and they felt like there was no evidence anybody had jumped out of the balcony door, right? Not to mention they'd probably be laying on the ground. That's a long way up, is what I'm trying to get at. And the only other way out of the apartment would be through the door that was locked from the inside. Now, you're right. I had said that I knew it was how did they call it? A bar lock or something like that? A common
door bar guard, I
latch.
believe.
And so essentially it's the secondary lock that you can put on the inside of the door when you're home to ensure that, even if someone were to break the doorknob lock, they still can't get in because the chain stops them, right? I mean, I'm sorry, the latch stops them. Think about like being at a hotel, right? That they have those
Right.
types of things. And that, so if, you don't yell back to the knock for housekeeping, they can't get in and they realize not to come in. So that was on. And that is sort of where it becomes a thing where, her fiance becomes in the clear, I guess. There were a few things. He seemed pretty adamant that the security guard was with him. And I believe that a statement has been submitted to the Attorney General's office from the security people on duty that day, or the security person. One of the protocols for that job was that they could not leave the desk during their shift, which is a little bit strange, but I mean, it is what it is, I guess, if that's what's required. And the security guard, in some accounts that I've read, and none of these are official, and it's all, just random sources of material at this point, but he said to Sam, I can't go with you because I'm not allowed to leave, right?
Right.
And so it negated his account of the story. We may see what the official statement is, but two security, I don't know what they're called, officers, guards, whatever, building security, two people that worked at the apartment building submitted statements. It's the new evidence turned over to the Attorney General by Ellen's parents. One thing that really caught me off guard, now I don't think you just said it in what you were sort of summarizing, but after all this stuff happens, Sam gets into the apartment, and an account of the events from that point forward seemed to indicate that he made 2 phone calls before he called 911. He called his father, and then he called his uncle. Okay.
And did you think that was significant?
Don't you?
Well, why would you? If she's dead, it's one thing.
Well, I mean, okay, so here's how I sort of see this playing out. Now, I also want to point out just really quick. So, okay, he leaves, goes to the gym, and when he returns, like not very long later, he was not at the gym for a long time. Now, I assume the gym is in the building. Was that your impression as well?
Yeah, I assumed that it was like an apartment, it's like an apartment that has a security desk allowing access to like the elevators and anything past the front lobby, and then it has like probably amenities there, including a gym.
Right, and so maybe it is maybe it's not as short as I think it is, since he's just walking, in the building, but the time frame seemed really short to me. Well, then he returns, and according to the 9 text messages he sent from 5:32 until 5:54, 22 minutes?
Not very. It's a little more than that. When you said 5:32 to 5:54, yeah, that's 22. Yeah, it's 22.
So 22 minutes, and then he calls between 5:30 and 5:42, so that's 12 minutes. So for 12 minutes he tries calling, and then like sort of sporadically in between that time he's texting, right?
Right.
Now, Okay, so I'm just setting the scene here. So he goes to the gym, he comes back, he uses his key, he can't get in. I know that when my husband locks our basement door, like, so from the garage into the basement and it's locked, I beat the hell out of the door. I'm so pissed that he did that, right? And so I imagine he was probably mad, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so and obviously my husband doesn't do it on purpose. It's just a force of habit. If he thought that, which is sort of what it seems like he's thinking in his pursuit here, right? With this 12 minutes of calling and 22 minutes of texting. And, in the meantime, he's like going back and forth to security. It's a weird, it's really strange because my initial thought was like, are you really going to go to security before you force your way into your apartment if you can't get in and you know that your significant other's in there, right? But I started wondering, like, well, what if he thought, she was just in the shower or something like that?
Yeah.
And that, like, shortly she would be coming and being like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, put the latch on or whatever. And I couldn't really figure out exactly. It's so bizarre, but I couldn't figure out why he made those 2 phone calls, because the way that the investigative report talks about it, it's like he was going to do CPR and then he discovered the knife in her chest. And so that makes me think like he didn't really look at her hard enough to make the determination of whether she was alive or not before calling 911. I know that, and I could be wrong, okay? There may have been other things that just were, really indicative of her not being alive. And to me, though, it seems like if I walked in and, somebody I loved was slouched down on the floor and stabbed, I wouldn't be concerned about calling my dad or my uncle. I would be calling 911 to get an ambulance there.
Okay, this episode is running a little long. Do you mind if I break some of this up? Because I actually want to send you a piece of audio to like listen to what I want to send you. And then I want to come back and I want to pick this back up like the beginning of a new episode. Was that okay? All right, let me do that right now.
Help! I need everything now. I just walked to my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come help now.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no! Oh no! It's an apartment.
What apartment number?
Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell.
So you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie!
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't tell where blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, But it's everywhere.
Okay,
it's everywhere.
Think she might have fallen? Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone.
Philadelphia Fire Department 842. What's the address? No,
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please hurry.
4601 Flat Rock?
Yes.
What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. Like she's not responding.
Okay, is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So I bring her.
Look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay, do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay, I can tell you what to do, okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her foot
Oh,
on her...
God.
Hello?
Yeah, hi, okay.
Are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off. Okay? Kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
Okay, I'm trying not to. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God. She stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell with a knife. Oh, no. Her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so I just let her down. Here now. I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is in her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Police, which operator? 277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are. You said 4601 Flat Rock, right?
Yes.
Okay, someone's on the way. And the knife is still inside?
Wait, so what?
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
Was it her chest or what area?
It's in her chest. It looks like it's right in her heart.
Okay, someone's on the way out there. Okay, just get.
Oh my God! Okay,
how old is she?
She's 27.
27, and there's no sign of life at all.
No, please don't be. What?
Pinch her under her arm and tell me if she responds to pain.
Ellie. She's not. Her arm and her hands are still warm. I don't know if that means, but there's blood everywhere.
I know, but you can't, and the knife is still inside of her. How far? Can you see how far it went in?
It looks pretty deep.
Okay.
It looks it's a long knife.
Don't touch anything.
Yeah, don't touch anything. Okay.
I'm not touching anything. I can't believe this, though.
So wait, it was just you there with her?
We're the only ones here.
And she ran in the door. You said latched it shut.
No. I went downstairs to work out, and when I came back up, the door was latched. Like it was, it wasn't like it was, it was like locked from the inside. And I'm yelling, and so I'm
was
yelling.
Your house broken into?
No.
So there's no sign of a break-in?
No sign of a break-in at all. I mean, there will be when you get here because I had to break the latch, but to get in.
Okay, 4601 Flat Rock, and this is a house, right?
It's an apartment. Flat Rock apartment.
Okay, that'll help.
Oh my God. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us. We are sponsored by LabbratiCreations.com. You can check them out at LabbratiCreations.com, and you can still use the code CRIMEXS for a fun pop pet portrait of your own pet. You can also reach us on Twitter, Instagram at TrueCrimeXS, or you can give us a call if you know anything about any of the cases that we're talking about at 252-365-5593. You can also reach us at Gmail at truecrimexs@gmail.com, and you can check out our website at www.truecrimexs.com. We'll see you next time.
This is True Crime XS.
I don't know what's going on with that music. I didn't do that. That's from Gavin Fish's YouTube channel. That was the quickest way for me to grab the 911 call and comment on it, which we'll be doing here shortly, because that's an important part of the story that's going to come up. But I'll tell you, all of this this case for me has become the definition of true crime excess, and I hate when people they say you have to make a choice. It's either homicide or it's suicide, and I just look at it and I go, well, is it? Does it really have to be one of those two things?